Today on The Anxious Achiever, an actress that we all know talks openly about her experiences with PTSD and social anxiety, navigating toxic work experiences, and managing fame when sometimes you just want to be alone. I'm Aarons-Mele, and this is The Anxious Achiever, the show that looks at the intersection of mental health and leadership and work and asks, how can we do it all better? Gabrielle Union is someone who, if you're around my age, you've known almost all your life. And actually, I thought of this episode because it is the 25th anniversary of one of my favorite films that she is in, Bring It On. It's such a great movie. I recommend watching it again. But Union, in addition to being a super successful actor and activist, is a New York Times bestselling author, an advocate for reproductive rights, sexual assault survivors, and the LGBTQIA community. I invited her on the show to explore some themes that you told me you wanted to hear about, like how PTSD affects anxiety and our relationships at work and beyond. What toll does a lifetime of trying not to offend people in power have on your mental health? And what's the impact of a toxic workplace? Here's my conversation with Gabrielle Union. So Gabrielle, I want to start. How would you define a toxic workplace in your mind, in your experience?
You know, I've been in so many. I've been in the entertainment industry for, 25 years. Thank you for that reminder. Ooh, since I'm only 26. So for 25 years, I've worked in the entertainment industry at a lot of different intersections. When I first started, I was a college student, very, bottom of the totem pole. I was working at the bookstore at UCLA. And, when I first started, that toxic work environment was loud and blatant and obvious. And the mistreatment was, they dared you to challenge them in a way that you knew not to. So whether that be the overt sexism, the straight up, what are you going to do for me in order for you to have an opportunity, just straight up, in a way that you'd think it doesn't exist now.
It was really
perhaps.
like that.
And this would have been 95.
Yeah.
So you imagine what it would have been when Hollywood first started. The amount of privilege that comes with abusive behavior is wild. I don't even know if I have the right words. It was just open, obvious.
Like unapologetic, right? That was my experience. You and I are about the same age. Like unapologetic.
Yeah, it was just a part of, it was a Tuesday. It wasn't anything that stood out. It wasn't anything that anyone whispered about. It was just like, I'm doing this to you and you're going to take it if you want this opportunity or if you want your check to clear, or if you want the next job.
Right.
It's just what it is.
And in your industry, how is what happened, and, talk about this as much as you want to, how was what happened to you with America's Got Talent both different and similar to what you might have experienced 20 years ago? I mean, what has changed and what hasn't?
Well, I wish I had a resolution, and I could be more clear about that situation. What I can say in relation to that experience not being that unique, that it's quite common, with other work situations that I've had, at other studios, networks. The accountability is slow across a lot of industries, right? People who have generally been able to do and say anything they've wanted are very slow to embrace accountability and change. Just slow.
And still in positions of privilege, so they don't necessarily have to.
They generally don't have to until, people stand up and stand together and fight back. And we talk about this all the time, because people are afraid of speaking up, and they should be. I'm not going to lie. I'm absolutely not going to lie. We've seen what has happened to the Weinstein people who stood up and stood out and put themselves on the front lines. That first round of women that were very vocal, there was a concerted effort, and it all has come out publicly, of hunting those women,
yes.
of torturing those women psychologically, of tracking them, of making them feel mentally unstable, and then using that perceived instability against them to try to negate their testimony and their truth. What I can say as a truth teller is that there are concerted efforts to hunt you, to track your family members in an effort to destabilize you, hoping to catch, have a paparazzi or camera person catch you in a moment of despair, and then to use those moments to justify trying to discredit you. So when we talk about being allies and we talk about being truth tellers, understand that the people who get to that microphone first, who are the first people to tell the truth, not just their truth, the truth, are often the first people with their heads cut off. And there has to be people standing behind them saying, me too. This is real. This is happening. Me too has to mean something more than a hashtag, something more than, a spiritual movement. It has to be a real movement where the cavalry has to arrive.
What do you know? I mean, but even truth tellers have feelings and have anxiety.
Yeah.
I would imagine that, I don't know, but I mean, did the Weinstein trial, did when you read about something that is either a toxic workplace incident, a harassment incident, does it trigger anxiety in you? And what do you do with those feelings? Because you are very much out there on the front lines.
Absolutely, because you're seeing what happens in real time.
Yeah.
That is the point that they're trying to make. I know I'm toxic. I know I do all this, but you see what happens when you speak out about it.
So stay scared.
No one will believe you. Yeah. It's supposed to have a ripple effect. It's supposed to send a message to everyone else that you will not be believed. You will be targeted. You will lose your job, future opportunities, your reputation. And they hope you lose your mind, that you lose your soul, that your soul will be for sale in order to keep the status quo in place. That is the goal. Trying to fight past that, that's why I'm like, wow, if not me, then who? I can't just call myself an activist or an advocate, and it's really just for retweets and to make sure my timeline is clear, and I'm not really taking any risk. What is the point of, and I'm using my finger quotes here, making it to kiki with the people who've been oppressing me? Not for me. But for me, success has to look differently. And for me, success has to look like being a real advocate and really being on the front lines and figuring out a way of addressing my anxiety in the face of being a truth teller.
Well, how do you? How do you besides, imagine you work out a lot, but like.
Well, yeah, I work out a lot, but I also
put all those feelings.
With my therapist.
Yeah.
with professional, caregivers. And this is, this is the privilege that I enjoy. I have the means to go to therapy more than once a week, if necessary, that I can Skype my therapist, that I can, not just therapists, any range of mental health care providers, whether that be the clergy, whether that be, and in this time of crisis and social isolation, I have enough Wi-Fi that I can Skype someone. Yeah. I have enough, resources that I can reach out to shamans. I can reach out to spiritual healers. I can reach out to mediums if I want. I can reach out to my therapist. I can reach out to trained professionals, and understanding that privilege even more in a time of widespread crisis, that we need those people who have the ability and the privilege to speak out. If you have the ability to address your anxiety, and for me to address my PTSD, to address, depression, and still fight, we need you. Or something even as recently as last week. We're at the, trying to be, better allies, to the LGBTQ plus community as parents of a trans child. I'm taking on, my former bosses and trying to do what's right. And I was getting pressure to be clear about who I was endorsing for president or who I was voting for before the California primaries. And I was afraid. I was looking at Ava DuVernay's, timeline.
Mm-hmm.
She's a friend and I follow her. And she was being attacked for talking about who she was going to vote for. And I got scared. And I didn't say that I was voting for, Elizabeth Warren. And, when she had to drop out of the race, I couldn't sleep because all I could think about is I'm 47. I have enough, resources and money and fame and this and that. And, I married somebody who has the same. And if I'm afraid to just say who I'm going to vote for.
But surely that's okay to say, you know what, I can't take on one more thing. Like, surely that is an important piece of being an adult as well, right?
It is. But I have been, really challenging myself to really be clear within myself. Was this an act of self-care? Or was this just selfish because I didn't want my timeline to be in the shambles?
I want to come back to your legendary, frankly, wit. And I read in an interview, I think it was in the New York Times, that you appear to be a natural extrovert and you're an advocate of sexual assault victims. You've been that way for over 20 years. That when you're out there, when you're talking to people, when you're being that ally, when you're on your book tour, the reporter said you feel a deep need to be emotionally available, open, and talking. But, I've also noticed that you reference social anxiety sometimes. And I wonder perhaps if you are, like me, like many of us, an introvert or socially anxious, and you sort of use your verbal skills and your great social skills almost as an armor, or it's something that you could put on, but you also have to take off sometimes.
Yeah.
And take that minute.
When I was meeting with a shaman, this is where you start to sound like a wacky Hollywood actress. So I was meeting with a shaman. True story, though.
No joke.
I was meeting with a shaman, and he said, "You are surrounded by rape energy."
Oh, my gosh.
And I was like, whoa. And I was like, please break that down.
And you were raped. I should just tell.
And I was,
obviously,
I was actually raped, and I'm very open about being a sexual assault survivor at 19. But he said, you are constantly put in positions and situations that are out of your control. Things are constantly happening to you that you have to deal with, and certainly deal with in a very public way that you did not ask for, nor did you want. And I was like, whoa, that is accurate. And part of that is having to deal with people socially, whether that's at an event that I have signed up for or randomly in Target or the grocery store or, last night walking to get, ice cream with my husband. And there is a demand for transparency and access and pleasantness at all times, regardless of what I actually may be feeling.
You can't draw boundaries.
I cannot draw boundaries because then people will then talk about, there's whole, blogs dedicated to bad experiences with celebrities. And I live in fear of that. Or I live in fear of that one time somebody who is really feeling like they're drowning, really feeling like they are screaming into a hurricane and no one is hearing them, coming across me and needing that connection and crossing me at a time where I might feel like I just don't have it. And I would never be able to forgive myself if I was not available to that person. And the reality is, I don't know when somebody is in that place, So I try to just be as, if I am in public or if I am making myself available online, that I am as accessible and as open and as kind and as compassionate as I can be. But that just means I have no boundaries.
Well, what do you do then? Do you have to literally hide or be alone when you need to take stock and get that alone time to recharge?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When some people are like, oh God, I bet you hate traveling. And I'm like, me traveling is like, because there's an expected silence, right? When you're on an airplane. If I have my headphones on, there is an expectation of privacy and solitude that people, for the most part, not everybody, for the most part, respect, right? When I'm in my car, when I'm on the toilet, I just try to stretch those times out as long as possible, But the reality is most of my life is in a public space, even in my own, home. I am called upon to be any and all things at all times, which I think a lot of us
Well, you're a
can
working
relate
mother,
to.
right? So at any level, you are always in demand, physically, emotionally, and otherwise.
But yeah, boundaries when you have PTSD, social anxiety, fear, like just a fear of a terror, that there is a feeling of terror in my entire body, when my arms can go numb and my fingers feel tingly and my armpits itch and it's flop sweat all over my body, when someone can touches my shoulder, right? Whether that's my husband, when I'm just not expecting him, or a stranger, the response is the same. The physical response is the same. And everyone's like, "Oh, I didn't mean to, scare you." And they get offended, like, how dare I have this reaction? I even deal with this with Dwayne. And the hurt in his face when I turn around and it's just terror.
Do you talk, I think for listeners, this will be valuable for our many listeners who have PTSD. Do you tell people in your life, look, I'm so sorry this triggers me. It's not personal. Here's what might happen. Like, is there a way that you sort of try to draw boundaries by being open about it? How do you handle it? How do you prepare people for what you do?
I try to talk about it as much as possible because I know I'm not the only one, right? And because I'm kind of constantly moving in different cities and different places in my personal life, in my private life, in my work life, I try to just be as open and honest and transparent as often as I can, hoping that maybe someone read an article or saw, listened to a podcast or saw an interview where they're like, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't sneak up on Gab because it may not end the way I want it to end."
And when you were dating Dwayne, did you say to him, like, here's some instances that I might freak out, and here's what you need to know?
No.
Really?
No, because I was afraid. And I think a lot of us are afraid of being completely transparent, even with the ones we love, because we don't want to appear defective. A lot of us have been too transparent too fast. And,
in a relationship.
In a relationship, in a work environment, and that's scary,
Say more about that.
Like,
what do you mean by that? What does that mean to you? In a work environment, maybe.
I'm an actor, so I'm constantly on different sets, right? There's constantly new people, and, me being, one of the executive producers on our show, and me being, the number one on the call sheet, and I don't have the luxury always of hiding, of having to make sure that I am making sure other people are comfortable in a work environment that I am responsible for. When I want to be hiding, when I physically want, there are times where I just say, "Can you please move my chair? I just need a minute to kind of pull it together today. I don't really have it today." And even saying that is terrifying. And I'm in charge. I'm the boss. And I'm terrified of appearing weak or not together. And I recognized that the more I'm just like honest, people are like, "Girl, me neither." And people will give you grace oftentimes when you least think they will, or compassion. So many people are in the same boat, but because we don't talk about it, because there's so much shame surrounding, PTSD and anxiety and depression and fear of social interactions, even when you're in a job or a school where that's kind of part in, it's built in. You'll be surprised how many people are like, "Thank you for saying this, and thank you for giving me permission. Thank you for leading and showing us that it's okay to take a minute." And people give you a minute. And sometimes all you need is to have a minute and to self-talk. And like sometimes for me, it's pulling into a parking spot at a grocery store. There have been times, and it kind of comes and goes over the last 20 some odd years, where I have this feeling of I'm going to be robbed or, carjacked or something terrible is going to happen. It's like insert worst case scenario here. The second I pull into a parking spot, and I have to sit in my car and tell myself that the likelihood of you being robbed or, the likelihood of something terrible happening right now is very low. It's okay. You're going to be okay. Just count. You've got your list. It's going to be okay. and for me, like making lists gives me comfort and calm. I don't know how that works with everyone else, but it was something that when I first, it was almost like a week after I was raped, my workman's comp kicked in and it paid for therapy after I was raped. And one of the, something that one of those therapists said was sometimes making lists can make you feel like you are back in control of a situation.
Do you make schedules too? Like, do you schedule out the day?
Schedules, like lists, mapping out driving instructions now with, this is before Google Maps and Waze and all those, different driving apps. I used to have a Thomas guide and I would map out when I would have to make left-hand turns at uncontrolled signals.
Wow.
That would be enough of a trigger where it's like I would like damn near black out, like I full flop sweat, full terror, just massive anxiety attack, having to make a left-hand turn, without a turn signal.
Was that about seizing control where you felt like you didn't have control? What was that about?
Figuring out a way to map out a day to give myself to take back some power and to take back some control and give myself a little bit of normalcy. The problem, of course, later, as you find out, life happens when you're busy making plans and making lists. Anything that would disrupt that could throw off my whole day, throw off my whole week. I would have a month where I couldn't sleep because I'd made a plan and something happened. Well, that's life, right? So I had to develop more coping mechanisms. But to this day, I still have my lists. It just, even making the list, whether I stick to it or life happens, gives me a bit of calm. Mentally mapping out a grocery store of like the route I'm going to go in Target gives me a little bit of calm. Self-talk gives me some calm.
What do you say? Do you have favorite sayings?
You're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. You're going to be okay.
And where do you feel safe?
In the bathroom, on the toilet, by myself. I mean, to be, I'm trying to think of other situations, but it's generally by myself. Like, I am confident in me. I know what I'm going to do. I don't always know what anyone else is going to do. Like, I would love to say that my child offers, me some comfort, but I don't know if anyone follows my child, Kavya James. She has her own,
They're not robots, are they?
They are not robots. She does exactly what the hell she pleases. And it gives me a lot of anxiety. So no, I mean, it's my husband. He does what he wants to do. Everyone, they're their own people. I take comfort in my soul that I know that when I wake up, my intention is not to do harm to myself or to anyone else. And that gives me peace. That gives me feelings of protection. That gives me feelings of comfort. Listening to, YouTube has, 1,001 suggestions, but meditation music that is like, that says healing and grounding, protective meditation music, right? Like, calling on the, on the universe.
The warm light flooding your butt. Yes.
I don't know. I couldn't tell you my seventh chakra from my fifth. I don't know. I don't exactly know how far my aura goes. Like, but just the idea of it is comforting. And sitting on the toilet, listening to that music, playing Words with Friends, locking the door so no one is opening it. That is where I feel my most peaceful.
It's so funny, though, because I'm like nodding my head ferociously. My husband will always say to me, because I'm like you, I'm very self-sufficient in myself, and I don't feel lonely in that, which it sounds like you don't either. But he always worries that I'm lonely in it,
I think it looks alarming, right? Luckily, I think that between the two of us, we have people who don't like the look of that. And that is nice. That's sweet. It's unnecessary though, right? Like, I am in comfort. I am in peace. I have given myself this grace to have this time. I had a really traumatic week. It was the week that Kobe and Gigi passed away. That Sunday, that was just a massive trigger, just the randomness of it. The idea that they too probably had a plan, and it was just the worst case scenario that could have possibly happened. And that Thursday, a friend of mine, a girlfriend of mine that was like one of my party friends, and one of, a girlfriend of a girlfriend that was just always around and full of life and amazing, and had made the conscious choice to not have kids and to not be married, and was living her best life, and was found dead.
Oh my gosh.
And she was found dead on Thursday, and they reasoned that she'd probably passed away on Tuesday, but they hadn't found her until Thursday. And it caused this widespread panic and fear in our group, right, in our crew and amongst her friends, of people who'd made similar decisions, right? And it made us all really reevaluate our choices, right? And whether we had, out of a fear of being alone, out of a fear of not having the families that we assumed we would have, when we were in our teens and 20s. And did we make fear-based decisions to have families and to get married or to couple up or to whatever, and out of a fear of being alone, of this very thing, of dying alone and nobody finding our body.
Yes.
And it was this, as you can imagine, it's traumatizing, and it just sent us all spinning, and it sent me spinning in the same few days in a different way. And I kept coming back to this feeling of, and trying to understand, isolation versus loneliness versus choice, right? And one of her friends, one of Joyce's friends, and Joyce is my girlfriend who passed away, said, okay, let us be really clear here. Joyce died alone, but she was not lonely. And you need to know that there is a world of difference. Her life was full. She had an amazing life that she chose and loved, and it was full and amazing in precisely the way that she wanted to live it. She might have died without others around, but she was not alone. She was not lonely. And take comfort in that. And it started me really thinking about my choice at times to be alone, and how much comfort I find in that, and how much joy I find in that, and how necessary it was when I got married, and when I became, a stepmother, and when I became a mother, how important my alone time is, and how important it is for people to respect that time as not a concern, a need for alarm, but something to be okay with.
And to be with yourself, because at the end of the day, if you can't be with yourself, you can't be good to other people. I truly believe that. The last thing I want to ask you about, you gave a speech in 2012 that it seems to me was a real turning point in your life at the Essence Black Women in Hollywood luncheon. And I watched it, and when you wrote about it, and it seemed like you were emerging a little bit from a hiding place, and that you hinted at this, that you had been sort of hiding behind your wit and your ability to talk about other people, maybe in Hollywood, in your profession, in a way that was very entertaining and very funny, but also built distance and almost like took humanity and community away from other actresses and you. And then you just sort of unmasked it all, and you said, this is crazy. This is wrong. Instead of going after each other, we have to be in community together, especially as Black actresses. You got a standing ovation. If I'm not wrong, Oprah started to tear up with Gayle King. What inspired you to just go for it and stop and stop? And it seemed, you said, like, stop working from a place of fear and maybe hiding behind your personality almost.
Yeah, I had gone through divorce. A show I had been on got canceled. I was in deep therapy, and I was starting to work with a life coach. And just, not being able to identify, she said, make a list of 10 things that make you happy. And I couldn't. Like my first few things were food items. And one of those was like a fake food item. It was like fake imitation crab. And she was like, well, I don't even know where to begin with you. It started there, really doing a deeper dive of how did I get here? It's easy, when you're when you reach rock bottom and like with a divorce and, when everybody is doing foul things and bad behaviors all around but if I get to the microphone first and I'm the more famous person, it's very easy to be like, all him, none of me. I am the victim. He is the villain. And let me skate scot-free because my brand will be buoyed by me being the victim in this, marital discord. Right. And that's an age-old, PR playbook that everyone, a lot of people use, not just people in Hollywood. And I kind of wanted to face myself. Because even though I could get to the microphone first, it wasn't him, all him. There was a lot that was me. And I was just sick of lying. I was sick of being that kind of, victim. I wanted to be a survivor of my own life. I'm not just, laying here and all these things are happening to me. That was part of it. Again, toxic work environments, toxic relationships, making peace with the toxic parts of my childhood and my upbringing. But at some point, there are things that I contributed that were toxic to all of those things. And it's time to be honest. To be given an award about like fierce and fearless, but I'm going to just get up here and lie. And I'm just going to speak in these odd cliches in a room full of people that I love, in a room full of people that I might have also maligned, in a room full of people who I am inspired by and scared of. What is the most impactful thing I can do with my time with this microphone? If I'm really doing the work, how about I try the truth? And to get that kind of response to the truth and being transparent really changed everything for me. And it made me realize I was on the right path, that truth and truth-telling and transparency and sharing this in community, whether that's community of Black actresses, Black women, the Black community, women, the global community, whatever that, where all of my intersections all meet, I get so much more fulfillment from telling the truth and creating more community and knowing that my words might be of help or of service than any check I may cash. And when I got to that realization that my joy can't be bought, my joy comes from peace and joy and grace. And whether that's what I'm offering myself or what I'm helping, hopefully, to facilitate with other people, there has to be a different definition of success for me. Because there's too many of us out here walking wounded, trying. And success perhaps is building community. And the first step is just talking, connecting, communicating, telling the truth so somebody else can feel comfortable to tell their truth. So then somebody else can feel comfortable to get help. And then once you get help, you can figure out how to tell people to get help. And then, and then it goes on and on. You share resources and you share coping mechanisms and you do podcasts and you do all of these things that create a bigger island.
Right.
So when you felt like you were alone on that island, you're like, it's overpopulated. Look at all of us here trying to get help and offer help and get healing. And look at us all.
Even us bathroom hiders. We have a community of bathroom hiders. Absolutely.
Because when you're in the bathroom, you might have your phone. You might be tweeting. You can tweet out, links to resources. Or maybe you can talk about who you are going to vote for. Because maybe creating a sense of community that's going to stand up to bullies, maybe that was the way, and we'll never know. And maybe this is a massive learning lesson that if you stand together in your truth, whatever that may be, we are so much more powerful and unstoppable than when we choose fear. And I'm speaking to you from the front lines of somebody who at 47 caved to fear, at 17 caved to fear, at 27 caved to fear. And every day I make the choice, and some days are better than others. So, you have to let yourself off the hook at times as well, but also hold yourself accountable. Yeah. And just vow to do better today than you did yesterday. Know that your collective truth is power, is healing. And it makes a freaking difference. It really, really does.
Oh, Gabrielle Union, thank you. Thank you so much for spending time. I wish you good health, lots of space, and you're such an inspiration. Thank you.
No, thank you so much.
That's it for this week's show. If you like the show, follow us and tell your friends. And please leave us a review. It really helps the anxious achiever get found by people just waiting for our content. I'm your host, Maura Aarons-Mele. Lots more to come in the next episode.